over 65% of, shall we say, we'll call them shooting attacks or military-style attacks against Jews in Yudan Shomron and the territories were
PA security service
perpetrated by so-called PA policemen and security apparatus personnel.
And these are the ones that Gallant wants to put into Gaza to replace Hamas.
Not just Gallant.
And not just Gallant.
Netanyahu also, apparently.
That's his concept, or I call it his misconceptia. And this is his Canton, what's been called his Canton plan. It won't work. Bibi even tried to explain the fact that the army and security services on their own broke the law by bringing in Palestinian workers, not against the fence, but in other areas, just on a trial basis. And if people, confronted Bibi on this and said, what are you talking about? It's against, we're trying to bring in foreign laborers, and you're claiming this is just a trial run? There's no such thing. And he evaded the issue and just, wanted to go away. Look, there are two things that happened recently. You told me about one of them that I hadn't heard today, dealing with the army's response to allow Israeli citizens who have been victims of PA-inspired terror to sue the PA. And I told you about another plan by Bezalel Smotrich as a response to America's...
Just to point out to those who are unfamiliar, but Bezalel Smotrich is the current finance minister from the National Religious Party.
To counter what the Biden administration is trying to do with their executive order, targeting the territories, our presence in the territories. And if you could just refresh my memory about what you heard today.
Okay, sure. What I heard today at 1 p.m. on the main news program on Galei Israel, the Galei Israel radio and internet news service, was that in response to this plan to facilitate victims of Arab, well, I call it warfare, others call it terrorism, whatever it is, violence, okay? Violence. Killing, maiming, you name it.
Nationalist violence. I think that's the euphemism. Nationalist violence.
Okay, I'll go along with that. I don't mind that. I do not have any claims, or I do not may have any complaint against my enemy who wishes to fight me, and in fact does fight me. I only have a complaint against those who wish to prevent me and us from
defending ourselves,
doing the same,
right.
Fighting our enemies and destroying them, which is what our duty and our right and rational and reasonable thing to do. So what I heard was that Bezalel Smotrich, the finance minister, and others have been discussing facilitating. I'm not quite sure what needs to be done to facilitate it, but to facilitate the suing of the PA, so-called Palestinian Authority, for these various acts of warfare or terrorism or nationalist violence or whatever against Jews perpetrated by, as we just said, so-called Palestinian policemen or essentially
terrorists in uniform.
Palestinian army. They're not just. We're not talking about policemen, because we're talking about people with armored vehicles and heavy machine guns, and some of them have undergone commando training and parachute training, and the list goes on. We're talking about an army. So 65% of those attacks have been perpetrated by people who work officially receive a salary from the PA. On top of that, every Arab who commits such an act of violence against a Jew and then is either killed or jailed by Israeli authorities, his family receives a very, very generous stipend, monthly stipend from Right, from the PA. This is called the famous Pay for Slay program. Okay, so you have clear legal basis if the PA is supporting, funding, and promoting such activities to sue them for damages. If a member of your family was killed or injured, or you lost an arm, or whatever it is, you should have the right to sue them for damages. And as in any part of the world where there is the rule of law, correct? Today,
Correct.
I heard announced on the news at 1 p.m., just a few hours ago, that the defense establishment opposes this idea that Israeli victims of such violent activities by our enemies directed against them by the PA should be allowed to sue them. Why? Because that would eventually mean that the PA would go broke. They would have to pay these huge damages, hundreds of millions, maybe billions of dollars, and they would go broke. So you ask yourself the question, and what's the problem with that? What's the difficulty? What's the downside? The downside is what we said before. These are Osloists. They truly believe in the PA. They want a PA, and they want it to be rich and powerful and have the funds. And they say nothing about the Pay for Slay program, and they try and hide the facts about how many of their security apparatus people are involved in violent activities against Jews throughout the country. So again, we're talking about the graduates of the Wexner Foundation and George Soros and people like and the various people who work together with what's her name, Shikma Bressler, and the rest of the Kaplan crowd.
And brothers in arms. This is why, I've long felt that if we're really going to get to grips with this situation, particularly in the territories, which is a fight not over land, but a fight, it's a clash of cultures, if you will, clash of civilizations, a zero-sum religious war between one side that wants us all dead and our side that wants to simply inherit what God gave us. That unless we view the PA as part of the problem and not as part of the solution, we're never going to get a handle on terrorism or violence, Arab violence in the territories. When I made a speech in which I laid out the reason for treating Jenin no differently than Gaza or Khan Yunis or eventually, hoped for, Rafah, people were horrified. And they said, well, how can you do that? I said, very easily. It's a terror center. It's an urban terror center, no different than what we found in Gaza. And that we should give the 24 hours to get out, those who want to, those who do not want to be human shields for the various terror organizations in this city, to let them out, let them go to Ramallah and be housed in refugee camps or what have you, and then to get on with the job of reducing to rubble. Well, people were horrified because they said that will undermine the credibility of the PA. I said, why is that? And they said, because they haven't been able to do it. And I said, don't you understand? They don't want to do it. These are their people in there. When a member of an organization that's not a Fatah or allied to the PA dies, they get a stipend also. Just like the PA is now wants to give stipends to the Hamasnikim, the families, the families of the Hamas soldiers, terrorists who died in the October 7th invasion of Israel. They're all the same. So they get all in a huff over this. And I said, look, the PA Pay for Slay program should be a valid target. Their propaganda organs, their radio, TV, internet, print publications that incite and encourage their readers and listeners to murder Jews should be destroyed, should be eliminated. We shouldn't treat people like Mahmoud Abbas, the president for life of the PA, and all of his ministers as somehow being exempt from paying the price for inciting and encouraging all this horrible violence against us. Well, they look at me like I'm an alien, and they don't get it, because as you described them, these are Osloists. These are people that are wedded to this idea that this is not an existential zero-sum war, that it's just a dispute among people with equal validity to the disputed territories over land. That's all. Well, it is.
You just reminded me, you mentioned a few times the last few moments, the fact that we are in a religious clash of civilizations. Well, of course you are right, but don't mention that to the person who is still, unfortunately, outrageously head of military intelligence, General Aharon Halewa, who only 2 weeks ago said that we have to be very careful and cautious as to how we deal with the Arabs during the month of Ramadan, because
no smoking, no eating.
We run the risk of causing the outbreak of a religious war. Got that? And then you wonder why he couldn't tell you what was about to happen
on October 7th. Correct.
Yeah.
Because there was no rational reason for it, because he doesn't view religion as rational. Right. I understand that.